That's better. Uh, Psalm 67 is written by an unknown author. It's one of four songs that are set in a row with each other from Psalm 65 to Psalm 68. And they're actually dedicated officially to the music director of the temple. And they were intended to be played on strings. All four of these psalms also very uniquely use the same word for the earth that's not found all that commonly in the Bible. It's found in the story of creation, which makes a lot of sense because each one of these four psalms is a call to return to creation, whereby everything that is, everything that exists to praise the Creator. Psalm 67 is about this wide-spanning universal call to praise and also a request for a universal blessing. In other words, the whole point is that God is asked to enlighten and bless all people everywhere, in every time, resulting in all the more glory for God's name as all the people come together in His praise. The psalm starts with a call for God's blessings and mercy. In what likely sounds pretty familiar, the psalmist asks God to be gracious to us, to bless us, and to shine His face upon us, so that His ways may be known on the earth and His salvation known to every nation and every people. The focus here is on God's eternal grace, which should be universally extended, bringing light to all the nations. And the words you probably recognize, right? Verse 1 says, "May God be gracious to us and bless us and make His face to shine upon us." This, of course, is a quotation, actually, the Bible quoting the Bible. It's from the book of Numbers, when God asks Moses to instruct Aaron and all of his sons, the Cohen, or the first priests of Israel, to bless the congregation, announcing, "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up His countenance," or His smiling face, "upon you, and to give you His perfect peace." Blessings are pretty interesting. In the Hebrew Bible in the Old Testament, blessings are significant expressions of favor and grace and divine approval. They encompass both spiritual and also material well-being, and are seen as very powerful affirmations of God's presence and His provision for the life of the person being blessed. That is, in fact, why many Hebrews came to think of wealth as being a blessing ordained by God, and then also why they rather falsely came to see the poor as being punished by God. It's also important to note that blessings, just like curses, were phrases that were spoken over a person, and they were believed very much to carry the power to affect outcomes. To be cursed by someone truly meant bad things would happen to them, and to be blessed meant good for them. It sounds maybe a little too simplistic, and some might even think a little silly to us now, but it really isn't. Blessings and curses do work, at least to some degree. If you tell your kids that they're dumb, it's going to affect them their whole lives. If you tell them that they're smart, that affects them too. Just consider the value of positive reinforcement, or maybe how researchers use the placebo effect. Blessings work. Neuroscience is pretty clear as well that positive thinking can actually have a physical effect because it helps rewrite neural pathways. It physically changes your brain. In other words, modern psychology and modern science are just sort of now catching up with what spiritual practitioners have known since the invention of prayer. It works. Here the psalmist asks for blessings, asks God to smile upon the whole world, and then for everyone to be able to see that blessing. During the Depression in 1933, a man named William Strider was in a restaurant in New York with friends, and they were all talking about how terrible things were. How terrible everything was for pretty much everybody that they knew. There are suffering people all over the place, previously wealthy people committing suicide, people jumping out of buildings, joblessness everywhere, and a lack of food. The conversation got more and more miserable as the meal went on. And one man in the group interrupted. "In 2 weeks, I have to preach a sermon. It'll be Thanksgiving Day," he said. "What exactly can I say that's affirmative in a period with world depression like this?" Now, Strider didn't really know what to say, but he felt the Spirit of God speaking to him in a still, small voice. "I guess why don't you just give thanks to those people who have been a blessing to you in your life and affirm them just for being them?" Strider didn't say anything else, but he couldn't shake the thought. Strider remembered a school teacher who was very dear to him, a wonderful teacher of poetry and English literature, who'd really gone out of her way to put a great love of literature and verse in him, which affected his whole life and his writings and his career and more. So later that day, Strider sat down and he wrote a letter to the woman, retired, now fairly up in years. And it was only a matter of days until he got a reply in what he called the, quote, feeble scroll of the aged. The reply read as follows: "My dear Willie, I can't tell you how much your note has meant to me. I'm in my late 80s now. I'm living alone in a small room. I am cooking my own meals. Fairly lonely, and like the last leaf of autumn, I'm lingering behind. You'll be interested to know that I taught school for more than 50 years. But yours is the very first note of appreciation I've ever received. It came to me on a blue, chilly morning, and it cheered me up as if nothing else had ever done. I'm not particularly sentimental, but I found myself crying." After reading this message, Strider then thought of a kind bishop that he also knew, also now retired, someone who had recently faced the death of his wife and was living alone. The bishop had taken a lot of time giving Strider advice and counsel earlier in his career and gave him a lot of love when he first started his mission. So he sat down and he wrote a letter to that bishop. And again, in just a few days after sending the letter, a reply came back. "My dear Will," it started. "Your letter was so beautiful and so real that I sat reading it in my study as tears of gratitude started falling from my eyes. And before I realized what I was doing, I rose from my chair and called out for my wife to share it with her, forgetting she was gone. You will never know how much your message has warmed my spirit. I've been walking around in the glow of your words all day long." Blessings matter, and they're meant to be shared. Here, the psalmist continues, adding his request for blessings and gives a reason. The author states a purpose: that your ways may be known on the earth, your salvation known to all the nations. Jason McWane is a sort of famous guy on the internet. A video of him went viral back in 2006. Back then, Jason was a high school senior and a 3-year team manager for the Greece Athenia High School basketball team. Jason also happens to be autistic, and he loved to play but didn't really get much of a chance. Going by the nickname J-Mac, Jason diligently fetched the water, chased down rebounds, helped with the warm-ups, and mopped up sweat. However, in February of 2006, for the last game of the season, Jason's coach decided to surprise little J-Mac. So near the end of the game, with his team up by 20 points, the coach asked the young man to go back and suit up. Jason ran back to the change room and readied himself. He took a while. So with only 4 minutes left in the game, Jason came back and the coach put him in immediately. Jason got the ball, he took a shot, and missed. But the people clapped. He got the ball again, took a shot, and he missed. But the people clapped anyway. And that encouragement helped. His third shot was a 3-point swish right down the middle. And as the ball went through the net, the gymnasium absolutely erupted with applause and smiling faces everywhere. But that's not the end. Jason went on to make 6 more 3-pointers, a team record. And he finished with 20 points just on his own. 20 points in 4 minutes. With each basket, the crowd became more and more enthusiastic. And by the time Jason hit his last shot, everyone from both teams were jumping up and down, shaking the stands. When the game ended, the bleachers emptied onto the court, and the crowd gathered all around the boy. And Jason's teammates hoisted him onto their shoulders after the game, and they paraded him around as a hero. Jason's mother noted, this was really the first time Jason truly felt that he had succeeded and should be proud of himself. I look at his autism like the Berlin Wall, and that day he cracked it. Jason's success touched many lives, many more than his own, as those who celebrated with him also experienced selfless joy in the delight of others. Today, J-Mac is an ESPY award-winning athlete who works in autism advocacy, public inspirational speaking, and continues to volunteer with that basketball team, though now as a coach. Because Jason was blessed, he can't help but bless others. The psalmist asks God to bless the whole world and wants every nation on earth to know God and God's blessings. You know, Christianity is definitely not a Western religion. If you watch TV, you might think it is, but it begins in Israel, spreads originally to Lebanon and Syria. Then it goes to Turkey, Armenia, Greece, and then Italy, Egypt, Cyprus, Malta, and then Ethiopia. Later it makes its way to France and Spain and the Balkans, all before it shows up in Britain, and long, long before it appears in the United States or Canada. Still, in the 20th century, only 10% of the world's Christians lived in the southern continents and in the East, while 90% of all Christians were living in North America and Europe, New Zealand, and Australia. 90%. Today, at least 70% of the world's Christians live in the non-Western world. This morning, more Christians worship in Anglican churches in Nigeria than all of the Episcopal churches and Anglican churches of Britain, Europe, and North America combined. There are more Baptists in the Congo than the original Baptists of Britain. More people in every church on Sunday morning in communist China than the entirety of Western Europe, and 10 times more assemblies of God members in Latin America than exist in the southern U.S. where it was founded. Psalm 67 calls for the nations to praise and worship God, acknowledging that His reign is over the entirety of the earth. The psalmist desires that all the earth worship God, recognizing His sovereignty and His justice. And the text reads, "Let the people praise you, our God. Let the peoples praise you. Let the nations be glad and sing for joy, for you will be the judge of the people, the judge with fairness, and guide all of the nations throughout all of the earth." This has come true. The prayer of the psalmist has happened, and it continues to. Notice as well that it's not just about evangelism or mission here either. It's about blessing. Let the nations be glad, it says. John Piper writes, missions is not the ultimate goal of the church. Worship is. Missions exist because worship does. Worship is ultimate, not missions, because God's praise is ultimate and not man. The verse reads, "Let all the peoples praise you. Let the nations be glad and sing and shout for joy." Our job is praise. When we do that, everything else falls into place. The Westminster Shorter Catechism, that probably many of you had to memorize at one time or another, may explain it the best. It's the only question when I do membership with young kids that I make them memorize. Does anyone know what question 1 is of the Shorter Catechism? I bet after I say it, you will. The question asks, what is the chief end of man? Or put more simply, what's our purpose? What's the meaning of your life? And the answer is supposed to come in response. The chief end of man is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. The chief end of man is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. Our chief reason for being is to praise the Creator. If we do not genuinely enjoy our faith, nobody is going to catch the fire of enjoyment from us. If our lives are not totally centered on Christ, we will not be Christ bearers for others, no matter how pious our words appear. You know, last week at the pastoral care meeting, Nesta mentioned that one of the best ways to see miracles is to look at what could have happened but didn't happen. It's easy to get upset if you crash your car in some little fender bender. But it's better to notice that a single second's difference in your response might have cost somebody their life. It's a miracle no one sees. It makes sense to be annoyed that you hit another car, but it's better to notice the pedestrian on the corner who was given a tiny chance in time that made all the difference. That meant they didn't get crushed, too. How many miracles happen every single day that we don't notice because we're focusing on the wrong things? To this end, I remember hearing a story from Dr. Friedrich Buechner. He told this while he was at Northwest University, and luckily I found the story recorded in one of his books. It's in a book called The Sacred Journey. And Buechner recalls, "One winter, I sat there in my Army fatigues, somewhere near Anniston, Alabama, eating my supper out of the mess kit while the infantry training battalion that I'd been assigned to was out. There was a cold drizzle of rain and everything was covered and muddy. The sun had gone down and I was still extremely hungry. When I finished and I noticed there was a man nearby who had something left on his plate, still in his box that he wasn't going to eat. It was a turnip. And when I asked him if I could have the turnip, he tossed it over to me. But I missed the catch and the turnip fell onto the ground. But I wanted it. I wanted it so badly. I picked it up and I started eating it, mud and all. Time deepened and it slowed down. With the lurch of the heat, I saw suddenly that not only was the turnip good, but the mud was fairly good too. Even the drizzle and the cold, it was good. Even the army that I dreaded for months, it was good. Sitting there in Alabama's winter with my mouth full of cold turnip and mud, I could see, at least for a moment, how if you ever took truly to heart the ultimate goodness and joy of things, even in their bleakest, the need to praise someone or something for it would be so great that you might even have to go out and speak to the birds of the air about it if the people wouldn't listen. The psalm concludes with a joyful acknowledgement that God blesses the earth, making it fruitful and abundant, and brings nations to rejoice and singing for joy. It's a call for universal praise and acknowledgement of God's goodness from everything and everyone, everywhere. It goes, let the peoples praise you, God. Let the peoples praise you. The earth has yielded its produce, so God, our God, blesses us. God blesses us, and all the ends of the earth will live with him. I hope I have time for just one short story here. Mr. Langley. Mr. Langley writes, after worrying for half an hour that we wouldn't get onto an overbooked flight, Sometime in the late 60s, my wife and I were summoned to the check-in desk. A smiling agent whispered that this was our lucky day. He was bumping us up to first class. How fancy. This was the first and the only time we'd ever been pampered on a plane with actual tasty food and coffee that was hot and plenty of elbow room, too. We could never afford this kind of luxury. And so we decided we'd play a little game, a game of Guess Who. We were trying to guess who else didn't really belong in first class. One man padded around the cabin in his socks with his shoes off, restlessly sampling all the free magazines like he was collecting them, playing with but never actually using that in-flight telephone you had to pay for. Twice, he sneezed so loudly we thought the oxygen masks were about to drop. He stuck out. He stuck out like a sore thumb. And then the attendant brought linen cloths for our breakfast trays, and another person tucked his into his collar like it was a bib. He didn't seem to belong in first class either. We see misfits like that in life, and misfits that way in church too. People who obviously don't seem to belong. People who might even embarrass you from time to time because you feel a little superior. But the truth is that we don't belong any more than they do. We all come here as guests invited to praise. The blessings of God abound, and they're everywhere, and they're limitless, even when they seem a little hidden. But the blessings of God belong universally to all people. Let's receive them and let's share them. Let's notice the little miracles that are happening all the time, all around us. Let's affirm the good we see, share the blessings, and sing God's praises the way that all creation was intended to do. Let's have the kind of faith that sees God's smile shining upon all of us, and then have some joy about it. Let's enjoy Him forever and help all people to do the exact same. May God be gracious to us and bless us, and to make His face shine upon us, that your ways would be known throughout the earth and your salvation among all nations. Let the peoples praise you, our God. Let the peoples praise you. Let the nations be glad and sing for joy. For you will judge the peoples with fairness. You guide the nations of the earth. Let the peoples praise you, God. Let all the peoples praise you. The earth has yielded its produce, God. Our God blessed us. God blesses us, all the ends of the earth, and all the ends will know Him. Amen.